Are you sick of government lackeys who say you didn't build that? Are you tired of elitists who think you need a government permission slip for everything? Everything you do is an A to B conversation, and the government should see their way out of it. Create true free markets by adopting the BIPCOT No Government License. The BIPCOT No Gov license allows use or modification of any product, service, or software except by governments or government agents. Go to bipcot.org. That's Bravo, India, Papa, Charlie, Oscar, Tango.org.
And welcome to Seeds of Liberty podcast, episode 59. So we're going to go with Jeremy for the BIPCOT No Gov license.
Yes, as always, the Seeds of Liberty podcast is covered by the BIPCOT No Government license. This allows for reuse by anyone except for governments and the agents thereof. You can find out more information about this at bipcot.org.
So today we're joined by Merrick and Jonathan from the RadicaLogic Podcast, which is also on the Seeds of Liberty podcast. And we're going to talk about, we'll start with the Harriet Tubman replacing, Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill. And
not replacing him.
Not replacing him?
He's just being relocated, that's all.
See, you see how much I pay attention to this stuff?
That's what you want to talk about.
She's joining him, and that irony is not lost on me.
Yes, I know. I believe I made a meme to that effect.
Right. And what is the significance of that? Because, of course, an abolitionist on a Federal Reserve note that's printed and owned by a central bank is, contains no symbolism whatsoever, right?
What could possibly go wrong?
Well, first of all, thank you guys for filling in for Dave. This is another good week for me. So I don't have to listen to him talk. So that's always a plus. It's always a plus. And
I always love having the opportunity to be fake Dave, so I can do my fake Dave.
No. There's no need to see. Everybody says that. No. I just want no Dave. That's okay. It's much better. Yeah. Just kidding,
man.
Just kidding, Dave. I love you.
I'm always working on it. Roll Tide. See.
Fascist.
Yeah. You guys say fascist a lot.
We haven't heard that in a while.
I made too much fun.
Quiet. He's been quiet on that front. But actually, I remember when they started doing the $100 bill, with the colors and the special stripe, and people made a big deal about that, and it's just amazing how it's like, the fact that these things are made like mass produced on a printer, or even now, just printed on a screen, at will. That kind of escapes people, and like, what really catches their eye is colors and a different face. It's funny that people, they get to, I guess it's the bread and circus, right?
Bread and circuses, man. You took the words out of my mouth.
I kind of enjoy the fact that it's looking more and more like Monopoly money.
Well, yeah, I said the same thing when they started doing the color stuff. It was, and I remember people making memes about that and showing that, like, the different ways they colored the bills kind of lined up with the Monopoly colors, which is it can't be a coincidence. There's just no way. But that's one thing, because at least during that changeover, they could fly under the radar of security. They were trying to make the cash more secure, more hard to counterfeit, which of course in itself is just a joke, because that's exactly what they're doing. They just use a different word. They call it printing money, but no, it's just counterfeiting. But but at least they had that to hide behind. So any discussion about that usually was just purely about aesthetics. People were just like, oh, look, looks better, looks worse, whatever. This one is more that, it really caused an uproar because people want to think they know about history and mouth off a lot about it, apparently. But I said it all it was a pure distraction. Because it's just now it's just a distraction to keep people from recognizing that the money's not actually worth anything. So it doesn't really matter whose face is on it. But the terrible irony about this one, like I said, all the headlines, even like the big, the MSN, all of the headlines all said she's replacing him, she's replacing him, she's replacing him, she's replacing him. And I think it was James Babb that I was talking to who said it might have been one night on the Fiends that he said it was him, and he said I went to the Treasury site and it says it says directly on the actual Treasury website. No, he's just getting moved to the back. So it's not he's not getting Andrew Jackson isn't getting replaced, he's getting relocated. But everybody,
he's in Whitpro.
Yeah, but everybody made a big deal of it. Yes, so she's now the face of it. But now the irony is even worse because, like we said at the beginning, you have the most recognizable U.S. Abolitionist. I mean, in our circles, it's usually Lysander Spooner, but for the average person, Harriet Tubman is the person they recognize when they think of abolitionist. The abolitionist, that's who they think of. So the most recognizable face of the abolitionist movement in America is now sharing a piece of paper from the Federal Reserve, which keeps everybody enslaved with their theft of inflation and everything else. And on the backside of that bill is going to be a former slave owner who stood up to the the national bank at the time, but in every other way was a horrible human being. I mean,
so let me hold on. Let me get this straight. Are you telling me that Harriet Tubman just pulled a Rosa Parks on Andrew Jackson?
Yeah, pretty much. Get to the back of the bill.
Send it to the back of the bill, man.
Nice.
Which it's funny you mentioned that about the opposing the bank, but even the way that he did it was completely unconstitutional, just like everything else that he did. Yeah. It was that whole the ends justify the means. Yep. And that's the argument that every statist will make for every essential little program that they have. Well, the ends. It's all about the ends. Oh, and the other thing I keep hearing is that Harriet Tubman was a Republican, don't you know?
Oh my God! Well, everybody. Again, that's why stuff like this is actually like one of the perfect distractions for the statist at large, because they all jump in and all want to claim like ownership over this person. Like I remember it happening with Lincoln again, a couple of like last year, the year before.
Tyrant.
What's that?
I said tyrant.
Oh yeah. Yes, he was. But I remember there was some big hubbub about they were removing his name from some school somewhere, and like everybody came out and it was like the Republicans, Democrats. No, he's this. No, he's this. It's like he was just a bad guy. So why anybody would want to claim ownership over him? I have no idea. But that's what it does in this situation. Like they're all like the Republicans. Yeah, the memes came flying out of everywhere. Oh, the slave-owning Democrat was replaced by the gun-toting, law-breaking Republican. It's like, well,
where does this even come from? I mean, I'd like to see a copy of her voting record.
Yeah, she was a lawbreaker. Yeah, that part is true. Did she carry a gun all the time? I don't actually know. I think there's supposedly pictures of her with one. So okay, she may have been a gun-toting. But yeah, a Republican. Yeah, I don't. Why would she be siding with because the Republicans at that time were only just basically brand new, the actual Republican Party, right? Because Lincoln actually was their first candidate, and they'd only been officially around for like 10 years before that, I think, when he got in. I think that's how the timeline goes.
That's right.
So she was she was automatically going with the guy who is like during his first inaugural address, didn't he talk about it? Or in speeches before that, he talked about how he wanted to send all the blacks back to Africa.
Oh, sure. He was a horrible racist and also a supporter of the fugitive slave laws.
Exactly. So you really think she was on his side? I somehow...
Yeah, no.
I'm thinking not. But again,
probably not.
But again, it's the perfect distraction, and just like so many other things when it comes to the state, it doesn't matter whether whether this was done by design or just as happenstance. The result's the same. Everybody gets up in arms, and they show passion over the most idiotic things.
I mean, that was the point that I was making, is that you had the proper tyrant on your fiat currency. That's appropriate. You should put Washington on those things. You should put Lincoln. You should put Jackson as a reminder of that Federal Reserve note. Fractional reserve banking. What? Yeah, those guys should represent that. Don't put the good people on there. It's just a distraction. Instead of paying attention to that, why don't you pay attention to the fact that it no longer says, what did it used to say, silver dollar certificate or something like that?
Yeah, silver certificate. Yeah, I know. Well,
silver certificate.
Right. Well, it used to be redeemable in gold.
Yeah, there you go.
It used to be like, what is it? $20 equals 1 ounce of gold.
Yep.
20 ounce, 1 ounce of gold, and then it got devalued to 50, and then
but now it's redeemable in your grandchildren's future. So,
but it reminds me of a quote, which is, "We revere the live conformists and the dead troublemakers." Right. So, if Harriet Tubman were alive today, would she be revered as she is? Now that she was dead, alive in the 19th century? Of course not, right? The people that are doing the exact same thing that she did are hated and scorned and ostracized from society, right?
Yeah. Hell, I think we ought to put Bill Buford on the 20.
Well, that would sully poor Bill. We don't want to do that to him. Maybe
that would totally make him mad.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
You don't want to make Bill mad. Come on.
No, you don't.
But yeah, so it's really amazing how these people that actually fought for true freedom in that time are now revered by complete status for the weirdest reasons. And they don't see the disconnect about what they did today and what anarchists and volunteers are trying to do today is exactly the same, right? Wow. Just connect the dots a little bit.
It's not exactly the same, but it's the same premise, yes.
Well, yeah, she wasn't a volunteer, but she was basically following conscience, following morality, and she didn't make that jump, which is what most people have difficulty with, is conflating legality and morality. Right, you always have to separate that. I always have to separate that with people. Like just today, I was with these people, and it's these homeschooling families, and we were doing something. And one guy's like, "Is that legal?" I'm like, "What does it matter?" like one of the kids one of the kids had a knife, right? And they were playing my friend.
Oh no! How dare you, Danilo?
Yeah,
how dare you let a child have a knife? What is wrong?
And
with
this
you?
guy's like, "Is that legal?" Like, and it's just funny. I find it so funny when people ask me that, because I no longer think in those terms at all. I don't even think what's legal anymore. I don't think about that. It's funny that people still think about that.
What was he asking about the legality about? I mean, was like, seriously, like, what exactly was the problem? Was it a machete or something? Like, what kind of knife did he have to worry about if it was legal or not?
Small, just like a I don't know, a knife that you use in the woods, I guess for whittling, stuff that, a small knife. But it's just funny when people bring the legality of things up to me, and it really shows the appeal to authority that people always have regarding the state, and how we must always bow down. We must always consult the Federal Registry according to how we should act and how we should behave. And then you ask, wait a minute, have you ever seen the Federal Registry? Do you know all the laws? Do you follow all the laws?
Yeah. Have you ever read the book that Harvey Silverglate wrote? I mean,
yeah, that one too.
Yeah. You tell people that, and then they find ways to justify that too. That's actually one of my favorites. You run into somebody who's like one of those the law type when it comes to something that you might have done, or if you want to discuss something somebody else has done that is, who's been harassed and or most likely caged for a victimless crime, and they want to go, the law is the law. But then when you point this out to them, amazingly, instead of that, smacking him in the head and going, oh, they'll find a justification for it. Well, that's just a ridiculous law. Okay, no. See,
right.
When I explained what was wrong with the victimless crime law, that this actually is too, I gave you a reason. I showed you how this was like, it was a violation of the consent of the individual because they weren't harming anybody. So, and I applied that equally all over the place. You're picking and choosing. You still don't see where there's a problem here, where there's a disconnect, where you're just going, oh no, that's wrong because I feel that it's wrong. So now we've gone beyond feeling, now we've gone beyond the law, and now we've gone into your feelings. Do you not really understand how crazy you sound?
aren't those the same people that are memorializing Harriet Tubman, who, if she had followed the law, nobody know who the hell she is?
Right.
And there would be 1,000
Right.
more dead slaves.
Right.
You know, I had this argument with somebody the other day. I said, do not conflate morality with legality. You know, they're diametrically opposed in most cases, especially when you're talking about these stupid malum prohibitum laws. It's just an opinion backed up by a gun. I really get tired of talking about it because I sound like a freaking, you know, sounding board just over and over, just stuck on a repeat.
Yeah.
You know, by that standard, the Romans that killed Jesus, that was legal.
Right.
You know, the fugitive slaves laws were legal.
Mm-hmm.
Slavery was legal. All of that was legal. Is that, should we just go back to that? Jim Crow. Let's do that. That was legal, right? No.
Because they get up and somebody eventually got up in arms about those things, and most of them did it for the right reasons, but everybody who came after, it's all about feelings again. They're not, you know, even if they were on the right side of something like that, it's often not for the, I don't want to say right reasons, but it's just for ridiculous reasons, because they don't see the connection between, like, how this is just a pattern of everything else. Because, you know, like you said before, Danilo, they don't recognize how people like myself, I refer to myself as an abolitionist because that's really what I believe that I'm doing. I'm trying, you know, I know that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to abolish the state, so I am by definition an abolitionist. But there is slavery involved too, so it's an even stronger case for that. But people like us are often ridiculed, and we're not, you know, we're maligned, and we're not taken seriously, just like people like her at the time. But
Sure.
they don't connect the dots. Because you talk about being a broken record, Merrick. I've been saying this repeatedly. The Twitter and meme generation, you know, that's what we live in, and that's what people's attention spans have been brought down to.
Well, that's the reason I do the memes and share memes to begin with, is because I have to dumb it. I have to Fisher Price everything and dumb it down to get a message across. And I just accepted the fact that it's going to make me sound conceited and arrogant and everything else. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm really not. You know, I'm average Joe. But if I want to communicate these messages to people, I really have to dumb it down. You know, what our saying on the podcast is, people are stupid. Just have to, you know.
Well, the thing is, if you talk to them on that level, then you're talking over their head. If you dumb it down, then you're being condescending, and you're talking down to them. So you really can't win.
Yeah, exactly. How do you win in that scenario?
And you're talking about the laws and the feelings. They don't make the connection that that's how these stupid laws get put into place in the first place. Is that everybody got their feels hurt, and so some politician who is a representative of these bunch of dumbasses said there ought to be a law.
Yep.
And now there's a law that you know addresses your feels, and then you go, well, that's a stupid law, and they're like, no, you don't want to get beat up by the police, just obey the law. You're missing the point, man.
So when I challenge the state and you know the efficiency or the fact that it should exist at all, the only argument most people have is about crimes that have a victim, right? So if you say that you're an anarchist and you don't think the state should exist, or you don't think the law should exist, you know, the laws in the sense that you know, monopolistic law, then they say, well, what if you're in a dark alley and you know a guy comes with a knife, or a woman's getting raped, or so all crimes with the victim, right? Nobody would say, well, what if somebody has a transaction and nobody's there to tax it? you never hear the
Actually,
the
you know what?
crime
I
law.
did hear that with this little town in Colorado, that their whole police department just quit. Right,
Oh,
the chief resigned. I don't remember the name of the town. It's like 700 to 1,200 people live in this town. Depending on what time of year it is. And the entire police department has resigned. There's no cops.
All four.
And there
of
was
them.
an article. All four of them. And there was an article in the local paper, and some asshole actually said, who's going to enforce the codes? And I swear to God. So there was the one time I did hear somebody say that.
That's funny. That's funny.
And I wish somebody would have beaten them in the street for saying it.
Yeah.
What about my codes?
Yeah.
And so what I tell people is that, like, have you murdered somebody? No, of course not. Now, is the reason you have not murdered somebody because it's illegal or because you know it's immoral and wrong? Right? And hopefully, it's the latter for most people, right?
That was the argument that Ron Paul made. He said in front of Congress, he said, if they made heroin legal tomorrow, would you guys start using it? Everybody's like, well, no, that's preposterous. That's ridiculous. And he goes, that's my point. Because
Right.
what you're talking about is the different kind of law, natural law,
Right.
malum se. That law has existed forever. We don't need codification for that. You assume that system of law in the dark alley when the guy pulls a knife on you.
Mm-hmm.
But
What are the police going to do in that situation anyway? They're going to come write a report over your dead body and call the coroner, man. They're not there to save you
Right.
from the guy with the knife.
yeah, they're crime reporters.
People equate
Crime reporters.
police
I like
with
that.
safety, and there's no correlation between police and safety. They don't keep you safe. They come when the shit is done,
No, well,
Right.
and
Sometimes they get
write a report about it, and then they maybe try to go find the guy that killed you.
Maybe not.
Maybe
Yeah.
not. It depends on how many times that happened that week and how many donut shops there are in the neighborhood to stop at.
well, I think the justification, at least for the more intellectual statists, usually goes beyond that, and it's no, it's having them there keeps crime lower because
Yeah,
of
the
their
presence.
presence. And
deterrent effect.
in some cases, this does have an effect. Unfortunately, as is seen over and over and over again when any report comes out about what's going on across the country, is when you combine that type of policing with ridiculous gun laws and weapons laws in general, well then nobody's getting protected because nobody gives a rat's ass about the presence because they have more guns than the cops do, and they know nobody else does. So their best interests, the people who want these things, always work against each other, which is exactly what the political class wants them to do, which is why it's so, to us it's so mind-boggling, but to them it just goes right over their head that, the fact that both sides of the system that they think are so different, it's not like a recent occurrence that they've become more of the same. They've always been the same. They've just been better at theatrics in the past. Now they don't actually have to be anymore because people are so dumb. They just they are so dumbed down that they don't recognize that this, oh yes, they're there to protect you. Okay, but what if they can't get there? And now I'm not allowed to protect myself. Well, you're more danger to then they'll justify everything. Well, you're more of a danger to yourself with that. Well, no, let me make that decision, please.
Okay, if somebody is breaking into my house, I can guarantee you one thing: I'm not going to shoot my own dog.
Oops. I shot
or your own kid.
Or my own kid, or I'm not going to throw a flash bang into my kid's room or any of those things. And that's the mindset that people are going off of. They have been neutered to the point by the state that they have to have the police force to protect them, because now you can't. Where you guys live, and you can't carry a gun, you can't carry this, you can't do that, the other, and that's the only thing. But then again, the state says, yeah, but we also don't have any duty to respond when you do call. So, okay.
Yep. Well, exactly.
There's that. And that's a non sequitur. That doesn't make any sense at all. You're taking away the ability for people to just handle things, the natural law that I was talking about, to be able to handle it themselves. And say, you know what, I might deal with this robber a little bit rough when he shows up, but if I can get away with it, I'll do it. Yeah. And that'll probably be the last robbery that goes down in the the streets of Crapville this week, because everybody else is going to go, man, you can't get away with it. That guy right there will kill you.
Yeah, right. Well, but I was just gonna say that's also part of the twisted thinking, because I saw that headline come up again today, and I don't know. I remember there was an article a year or two about this, and I don't know if somebody was just sharing that old one around again, or if it was a new one about somebody in the HuffPost, I think, writing about the unfairness of self-defense because the person doesn't get a trial. And
you're depriving them of their ability to get a trial.
I'm like that is how twisted the thinking has gotten for these people, and I'm sure at the top of that whole thing, that's by design. But the people that follow along and nod their heads and go, "Oh, that makes perfect sense," it's like, what? No. You break into my house and you threaten my children, my dogs, just my property in general like that. You break into my house with malicious intent. I am going to take care of you, and I don't give a rat's ass about your trial. I'm sorry. If I did that to you, I would expect to be shot, which is why, besides the fact that I'm really not big on stealing, that even if I was, I would think twice about doing it if I knew the other person was going to have the very good chance of being armed on the other side. But they don't think like this. They just go, "Oh yeah, no, rights, people's rights. Everybody has rights."
Yeah, but how they're completely misinterpreting the definition of rights. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
I was talking to some of my the homeschooling mothers that I hang out with.
Say it ain't so.
And I was talking about the Cheryl Yurkowski incident with them, and what was amazing was, I said the whole thing, and then at the end they said, "No, I think you're not telling me the whole story. I think there's more to the story," as if Cheryl must have done something to deserve that, which is the essence of victim blaming, which is so tragic. It's like you have an obvious power differential, right? And there's obviously one person, not only with authority, but with a gun and with the legal right to use force, deadly force if necessary, and then the victim, the person with the least amount of power and authority, gets like wounded and just bruised and beat up, and you still blame the victim, and you still prosecute the victim, and you still try to imprison the victim, and it's still her fault. Like, what? It's amazing.
Stockholm syndrome in its purest form. We had when we had Virgil Verdugo on, was it several weeks ago?
Yeah.
We asked him about because we love the app, Cell 411 app. If anybody doesn't have it, you need to have it. Get it. Just do it. You can thank me later. And we asked him specifically, what do you do realize that the police are going to see this as an affront to their monopoly on that service? And he said, well, we haven't seen a lot of that yet, but it could happen, but we can deal with it. And what was it, like a week later? I don't know if you guys have been seeing this.
It was a matter of days after the podcast.
The cops get a hold of it, and they're trolling, and they're giving negative reviews on the Google Play Store, and they're threatening, and they're going in under false names and saying, oh, you're going to get somebody killed.
That, and people are talking about, I'm going to download the app just so I can get the notification and show up and help the police.
Yeah, there was that too.
It's just,
well, it's unfortunately it's expected, because the same thing happened with Waze.
Yeah, they did it with Waze. Yeah. They're still doing it.
They're actually trying to get rid of the part of Waze where you can notify that there's a speed trap, because there are officers claiming that makes them unsafe. If I drive by and there's a guy sitting behind an oak tree like Roscoe P. Coltrane waiting to find a victim going a few miles over the limit, and I put that on my Waze so other people aren't victimized by this guy, I'm putting out a notification of where he is so people can come and attack him. That's their mentality, and that's the argument they're making to try and get rid of that feature.
Oh yeah, they make the most extreme, almost lifeboat scenario situations to throw out there for the emotional appeals to go, our lives, just like everything else. We were afraid for our lives. I felt like I was in danger. The defense every cop is trained to give as soon as they shoot somebody. The first response.
I thought he had a gun.
Well, yeah, no, I was afraid for my life. That's all they have to say these days. And whether it's true or not, that's all they have to say, and they'll get investigated, which means they'll be on paid leave until everything gets sorted out. And more often than not, it's somehow ruled justified.
Sure. I mean, sure. Well, I think I think that they really are telling the truth. They are afraid for their lives because they're all a bunch of wusses.
They should be, but I mean, but again, they take the extreme examples that are rare occurrences and make it out. Like I remember, was it last year? It was last year when the guy came up from or a year and a half ago now, when the guy came up from D.C. up to the Bronx and whacked those two cops in the back of their car, and that was a big deal where everybody freaked out and the revamped talk of the war on cops got started again, and it was funny because every time they tried to trumpet out that war on cops, there's enough people now with facts to go, well, no, let's see how many people have been killed by cops this year, how many cops have been killed. And then they tried to mess with that they tried to say, no, this is the number of officer deaths, and then you look into it, it's like, well, no,
those are all suicides.
Well, no, not even. The deaths, most of them were, because I think suicides were actually kept out of it because they couldn't fudge that one too much. But the majority of them were car accidents.
And not even related to like a chase or something.
Yep. No.
Just like accident.
Car crashes and heart attacks.
And then the other thing that is mentioned is the police dogs, right? They're listed with the cops.
Yep, they're treated officer down
as a human being. Which is
every time I think of Half Baked with the horse when he gets busted for killing the horse, for the diabetic horse, and everybody freaks out. But that's what it is. It's like that's what I mean. Yeah. Hey, I love animals, but guess what? You're going to charge somebody for the same crime as killing a human being as for killing an animal just because it's been dubbed a police animal.
Well, that's only if you kill or harm a police dog. But if they kill your dog,
well, no, of course, the double standard.
Hey, dog lives matter.
Only police dog lives matter, apparently. To these
blue
guys.
Dog lives matter.
Blue dog. Exactly. Specify the color.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at the numbers, and I think the averages are people killed by cops in the U.S. every year are between
1,500?
Yeah, between 12 and 1,500 a year. Cops killed average about 30. Let's round it up, and let's just go to 50. But most of those are done in execution of these no-knock raids. They're drug raids, war on drugs type stuff. Yeah. These are victimless crimes anyway. They're going in and putting themselves in that situation. And my take has always been, okay, I have an idea. Stop doing that.
Well, yeah, exactly. And
if the dude with a little quarter bag in his pocket when he gets pulled over and he's got a prior and he is not going back to jail, okay, if he doesn't have that threat of going back to jail, do you think that when that cop pulls him over for a taillight out and walks up to the window, is he going to stick a Glock in his face and pull the trigger? No. He's doing that because he's being threatened to be abducted.
Well, sure.
So you could take that 30 and drive it down to 0. War on cops, fixed. There you go.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, because to go back to the thing you were talking about with the situation with Cheryl, it actually doesn't really matter if there is more to the story.
No, it doesn't.
Because the fact that they were in her home.
Exactly.
Just right. Because someone called about yelling.
Yeah. All right, so let me elaborate there. So she's like, well, how did they get in? Because they were sleeping. So that's what she said, right? She was sleeping. She was woken up by her daughter crying.
Well, no, she had been fighting with Jesse, and then she walked away from him to go to bed, and then the cops only showed up like less than an hour later, I think. So it was still a matter of she came out of her room to find the cops touching her daughter, which is still, again, you walk out of your bedroom, you're in your home. You have gotten into an argument with, it doesn't matter, like, you got into an argument and you walked away from it. You weren't like, there was no physical battle going on or anything. You walked away from that argument and went to your room. You come
Actually,
out.
the yelling on the yelling that the neighbor reported was him on the phone.
Yes, no, exactly.
He didn't even know she was there.
No,
she had actually gone home and gone to bed, and he didn't know that she was there.
Yeah.
So he was pissed off because he didn't know where she was. So he's on the phone yelling.
No, I know, but exactly, that's what I'm saying. But I know that. But I'm saying, she, no matter what, she comes out of her room, and there is now somebody she doesn't know, she's got a fancy costume on. Who cares? Someone she doesn't know touching her daughter. I wouldn't even bother to ask a question. I just would have punched, like, immediately. I just would have launched myself at the person, So, like, again, it doesn't matter. Like, that's the thing in these situations that really pisses me off, because it doesn't matter if there's more to the situation. It doesn't matter if there was something at that moment. Yeah. They were invading somebody else's house on some pretense of protecting and serving, which maybe in Canada the Supreme Court hasn't declared that it's not their job, but it's the same everywhere if it ever was to begin with, that it's not to protect. So just because they invaded somebody's home, once you do that, I'm sorry, all bets are off. So
yeah, if we were on our show right now, I would give a prescriptive on exactly how to deal with home invaders, no matter what costume they're wearing. But since I'm not on our show,
you can go for it. No, go for it. I'll be more than happy to put that
out. Okay. Aim high, because some people wear body armor.
Nice.
And do you think that makes me happy to have to go out in public and put my name behind having to say something like that? No, it doesn't.
It's ridiculous.
But it's terrible. But I look at every time I see something that happened to people like her, it's infuriating.
Just an FYI, there was a guy when they had me in the Rankin County Jail in Mississippi. There was a guy across from me, in the cell across from me, who was in there because he had a police uniform and was going around to people's homes as a police officer, knocking on the door, gaining entry and compliance with the police uniform. Yep. And then he would handcuff them, beat them, and steal all their stuff.
Wow.
That was what he was in jail for.
Yep.
So when you see this person in your home, just because they have the costume on, does that mean they're a cop? If they have no reason or business to be there,
yeah, and
right,
and unfortunately, like with this particular situation, because I've also dealt with people who say they feel bad that it happened to her, but if she just would have listened, it's like, no, she was in that, like that's the other guy. I'm sorry that. They have to do this because it was called, because they were called to protect her, because somebody thought her husband was going to do something to her.
Well, then why the hell didn't they protect her?
Well, number one, yeah, that's the first problem. But even beyond that, it's like, okay, yes, I understand that in certain situations, the abuser makes it so the person being abused can't reach out and call the cops. So unless somebody else does it, yes, I get that happens. Horrible situation. But because you folks want to make that go away, the only thing you could do is beg for these blanket laws that affect everybody. So even where you have a situation where there's a domestic dispute, but it's just an argument, or in this situation, even worse, an argument that took place earlier and then confusion after the fact about the argument, where nobody knew where anybody was, and a drunken person was yelling on his phone, and he was the one who was yelling on his phone, and she was the one who got her ass kicked.
hey, man, are you okay? They'd have found me on my back deck drinking a beer saying, yeah, man, I'm cool. And end of story. But instead, I end up going to jail, thrown naked on concrete floor with 4 other naked guys for 5 days, starved the whole time I was in there, and then ran through a kangaroo court where I have a suspended sentence hanging over me for 2 years. Never in my life have I had a criminal record. Now I have one. It's insane.
Yeah, when the neighbors could have just come over and, knocked on the door and said, hey, man, here yelling. Is everything okay? And you could go,
worst part
I'm just watching Mad Max.
I've always told people, my family included, that I have no contact with anymore, by the way, because they don't understand this. If you ever want to make a situation worse, call the police. I don't care how bad you think it is. If you think it's as bad as it possibly can get and you want to see it get worse, call the police.
Yeah. I think another thing I like to point out is, when we talk about anarchy to people, they kind of get confused and muddled in the brain, because they say, well, what about in this situation? What would you do? In this situation, what would you do? No, it's not about that. Simmer it down and distill it to the basic idea, which is you act and claim responsibility for your actions. That's all I ask of you. That's it. You don't have to know economics. You don't have to know how business is going to work. You don't have to know these hypothetical scenarios and donut problems. No. Act and claim responsibility for your actions. That's all I ask of any person, including, of course, all government agents, right? And if they did that, they would not act the way they act, right? Because, with or without a costume, we all must adhere to the same universal moral laws, right? And I think that's a helpful way to distill it. That just act the way that you would if you had 100% accountability and responsibility for everything that you do. That's it.
And when you leave people alone, they generally do that. You avoid a lot of the problems that we're talking about to begin with, that we need these cops to show up to deal with. Yeah. That's called spontaneous order,
Right.
Yeah, but most people fear that more than anything else.
Was a guy somewhere from back in the past who wrote about it. What's that?
Yeah, I think so. No, I was saying most people fear the idea of spontaneous order. They can't wrap their head around the fact that things will, because in their mind it's like you're that's utopian thinking. Things will just fall into place. No, that's just kind of the way things work. If you let things mature and blossom and do whatever and just not interfere, just literally let nature take its course. In a lot of situations, it's a lot better. But they don't want to. They fear that. But the thing with the just laws in general, people they don't you talk about them not even understanding anarchy in general, but they fear having the cops taken away. It's like, well, no. I mean, you're talking about cell 411, like that's a great thing for people like us, but unfortunately, the majority of the people that call the cops are people that would still never use that right now, because they're just the busybodies that think think something has to be done, but they won't do it themselves. They'll call somebody else with guns to do it. But cell 411 is a great example of what could be done even right now alongside of cops. And then you have stuff like, Dale Brown and threat management in Detroit. And I mean, they're actually bigger than Detroit, but he's the focus of what's going on there. And, right now you have these options. And what do they do? They're all about defense. They have nothing to do with offense,
Yeah.
And
it's de-escalation.
Exactly. Well, that's what that Danilo. That's what you were saying before about if you go to your neighbor's house, if you see something going on, are you going to jump right in and like start punching people or trying to shoot people? No, if it's somebody, especially if it's somebody you're going to try to de-escalate it. Which, as Dale Brown pointed out, I've heard him say it in multiple interviews now, that like that's what he figured out in the 20 plus years he's been in the business. He started out all gung ho and thinking I need to have the biggest and baddest guns because that's what made the most sense to him, because he came from military background, I think, right? So
I think so.
Yeah. So that's what you're trained for. Okay, well that's what I got to do. And he figured it out over there. It's like no, de-escalation and just using your head a hell of a lot more than you even think about using your gun can be so much more effective. And they have like a proven model, but still so many people just like, oh, it could never work. It could never work.
Well, I think it does work for him, man. And in over 2 decades, there's never been an officer killed, and they've never killed anybody in over 20 years. And they take more of a psychological approach than a physical approach.
Yeah.
Well, exactly.
And it's proven. You can't deny 20 whatever years of results. There's no crime where they're at. Anywhere they are, the crime's gone, and they don't hurt people, and they don't get hurt.
How can you beat that, right?
Well,
And we've been in a lot of fights over the years because, well, let's face it, we've been stupid for most of our lives.
True story.
But after being in a lot of fights personally, one thing that I do understand is when I see 2 people, and we understand that the most dangerous situation you can look at is a domestic dispute. When you have 2 people like that who are in that passionate argument, you just need to physically separate them. That's de-escalation. Just get them away from each other. That doesn't require somebody showing up and pepper spraying everybody or shooting a dog or pointing a gun at you or anything else. It's just like, hey, look, you're really upset right now. Let's come step over here and, take a breath. Let's go down to the store, grab a Coke. That's 90% of everything you're ever going to run into in life.
That, and there's also just leave it alone for a minute. We were down on the beach yesterday, door knocking some music venues while I'm down here in Florida, and there's some drunk guy running around without a shirt on, screaming at the top of his lungs, "I need a cop! Somebody stole my stuff!" And over the course of 30 minutes, we saw this guy like 8 times, and every time we saw him, he was chasing down some other random person that he didn't know, offering him money if he would go beat up this person that stole his stuff, and it was just crazy, man. But every time we saw him, we looked at each other, and Merrick would be like, "Hey, let's steer clear of this guy. He's nuts," and we just avoided him, Now, had we gotten into a conversation with this guy the way he was, there's a chance we could have ended up in a fight with him. I mean, he was just all worked up and pissed off and talking about somebody's leaving here in a body bag and all this off the wall stuff. We just left the guy alone. And over the course of probably close to an hour, we saw this guy repeatedly. And every time we saw him, he was just running around doing his crazy routine. And we had nothing to do with him. He didn't hurt anybody. He was annoying, but he didn't hurt anybody.
Just walk away.
We just steered clear of him. Sometimes you just leave something alone.
That kind of reminds me of politicians, actually.
Yeah,
just crazy people trying to control others, and fundamentally they have no power if nobody pays attention. And
right,
that's the whole idea. And that's
ignore them and they go away.
And that's the whole idea of stating. It's like, no, we got to assassinate the president. We got to put. No, you don't actually. You just got to
ignore him.
Stop. Stop.
Go home,
stop
Obama.
attending.
You're drunk.
Maybe I don't know. Maybe a straitjacket, maybe a padded room, and that's about it. They don't hurt anybody.
Let them come off their meds. They'll be all right in the morning. It's okay. You don't have to shoot them. But all I was going to say is it's funny. It ties into a lot of the stuff that we talk about in self-defense training is that the first choice is always avoidance, no matter what it is. If there's one person who is being violent, if everyone else will have the courage to run away, even, if I'm wearing a gun, which I always am, and somebody's doing something, I'm running over here. I'm gone, man. I'm headed for the hills. And if everybody does that, you've got one crazy guy who's angry with a knife standing in a room by himself, looking around going, fuck, what just happened?
That actually reminds me of a misconception of gun owners is that I hear that they say, you people who have guns, you're just asking for trouble. You go into a situation and you know that you can handle it because you have a gun, so you're just going into dangerous places because you want to fight. And it's just amazing that people think like that. Like
they do, and what they don't understand, and this is sorry, I'm a little bit passionate about this, but when you carry a gun, you have a responsibility not to use it, to run away. Because now, if you get into a fight, like yesterday with this crazy guy, I was wearing a gun.
We both had guns on us.
I may have been wearing 2, but now you have a responsibility to run away, because if you get into a fight, now you just brought a gun to a fight. You just turned it into a gunfight. You can't do that. If that guy gets off one lucky overhand right in the jaw and I drop on the ground in the parking lot, he sees my gun, what have I just done? You can't do that.
Yep.
It doesn't work that way. So it's exactly the opposite.
I had a good friend that I grew up with that was murdered with his own gun in a bar in Columbus, Mississippi, several years back.
Yep.
And he didn't do anything. There was no fight. The guy that killed him had actually started a brawl at another bar. And it was like the whole place, man, brawl. The cops were called and he fled. And while he was driving away from that place, he ran over a pedestrian. So the cops are now looking for this guy for the brawl and now the hit and run where he nearly killed a pedestrian. And he parked at the hotel he was staying at. And rather than go in his room, he ran around the corner to this little pub where my friend was sitting at a stool right inside the door. And he had a concealed carry and a holster. And the guy came in and literally came in the door looking for somebody to jump and took my friend off of the bar stool. And as he tackled him off the stool, he felt the gun, and he took it out of my friend's holster and shot him in the head several times.
Wow.
And the guy that was with him tried to intervene and tackle him, and he killed that guy. And another friend of mine who happened to be working the bar dove over the bar, missed him, landed on his hands and knees on the floor, and the guy put the gun to his head. And while my friend begged for his life, he pulled the trigger but was out of bullets. Because he had already put them all on the other two guys, and he drops the gun and walks outside and sits down. But my friend was killed with his own gun. You know, so when you carry a gun, whatever fight there is a gunfight because you brought the gun.
Yep.
You have it. You know, it's always a gunfight. And, you know, yesterday that guy, he was no threat to me. I'm pretty sure either one of us could have kicked that guy's ass, and surely the both of us could have. But we were both carrying guns, and all we wanted to do was stay away from him. So the thought that gun owners, and I've been carrying for years, he's been carrying for a lot more years, that gun owners want a confrontation, they want an opportunity to use their guns is pretty far from the truth, man. It's and to avoid trouble.
Avoidance is your friend.
Yeah.
If I shoot you, you made me do it. You forced me to do it, and I didn't want to, but you made me. You know, and I hope that I never have to do that. I'm willing to.
And usually, going back, people are usually peaceable people. In public, you know, that is what anarchy is the society that we live in. It's in our own best interest to be peaceful towards each other. But you get that one outlier, like the drunks and the dope heads and the whatnots, leaving the cops out of it. But what I've always taught, because I teach, armed self-defense and stuff, what I've always taught is that if you're at the point to where your gun is coming out, your tactics have failed.
Yeah.
You know, everything running up to that has failed because you should have had awareness. You should, know what your surroundings are. If you see somebody, you have to have an escape plan. You know, sit where you face the door, sit close to an exit in a restaurant. All of these things that aren't paranoia, they're just in case. And if anything goes down, run away, get away from it. And there you go. Now you don't have to worry about, what caliber do I need or what technique of Aikido am I going to use if somebody comes. No, man, if somebody's acting weird, just run away. Done.
What you got against Aikido?
I like Aikido, man. I'm just saying. If they're that close, your tactics have failed.
I think it comes also back to having more responsibility for your actions, as regular human beings, whereas as people in positions of power and authority do not, right? And they claim they are above those universal laws of morality. And so, a murder for them is not a murder for us, right? And so they can act with immunity in those situations, which is so unfortunate. How people still are clouded by the idea of authority, and that they have the right to enforce these myriad laws that really truly do enslave people. But just talking about moving violations, stop, on the highway for, whatever, 10 miles over, 20 miles over, victimless crime, right? He didn't hurt anybody. And the fact that people don't understand that, when you are pulled over by an officer, that is a death threat right there, right? Right when he turns on the lights, that is a death threat. You must comply, or as you said, Merrick, there will be escalation, right? Until you do comply.
Well, now you just had somebody bring a gun into a situation where there was nothing wrong.
Initiated conflict.
No, yeah, there was.
A guy wasn't wearing his seatbelt when he pulled into the convenience store.
Yeah. And the irony of the motorcycle cop pulling people over for no seatbelt, that's not lost on me either.
I've told that to people, but they don't see the irony. It's amazing. They're like, no, he's special. He's special.
Yeah, right. But you just took somebody who's peaceably traveling from point A to point B, and you forcibly stopped them, and you brought a gun into it, and you've given the gun to somebody who really can escalate, and that's the only tool they have in the toolbox is escalation.
Right.
That's what they do. The force compliance that they teach to officers, the way that they get compliance through intimidation, that's taught from the very beginning of police academy. Mm-hmm. You're just asking for more of what you're getting. Yeah. And then when some people get tired of that, they say, oh, there's a war on cops.
I think there's some people that join law enforcement that do for good intentions, right? They want order, they want to truly protect and serve, and then there are also those people that are just attracted to positions of power, and they just want to dominate and subjugate other people. Sure. And it's so unfortunate that the same exact reason why there is no such thing as a good politician, there is no such thing as a good police officer, because you are already in a power differential situation, master slave type thing. And there is no amount of authority, coercive authority, that is legitimate whatsoever.
I appreciate you saying that, because I've been saying that for a long time, and I get a lot of heat for it.
I've lost friends over saying that.
Yeah.
But my point is that there are no good cops by definition. You can't be, because when you're a cop, you have to enforce the bad laws, and if you are enforcing a bad law against peaceable people, by proxy, that makes you a bad person.
Yeah. Well,
seems pretty simple to me.
Well, I agree to an extent. I usually put it in a slightly different terms, though, because I maybe because it makes it easier for people to digest. Good, bad, such subjective words anyway. But I think there's no good cops, because the position itself is essentially immoral, what they do, and the processes they go through. But people confuse the good characteristics of the individual, the people that Danilo was describing, because I'm sure, I remember looking up the statistics a while ago when I was working on something, and it still says that there's only all the information you can find. It still says there's only about 1.1 million law enforcement officers in the United States. 1.1. That seems low, doesn't it, for 330 million people? Like, with people the way they want cops everywhere and stuff like that. Like, when you talk about just having to stop paying attention to these people, like, just think about that.
Yeah. For every one, there's 330 other people standing around just looking at them going, no.
So, but no. You don't even need all 330 of them. You don't even need 160 of them. 165 of them, whatever. You need, maybe 75 of them. And that's it. Game over.
Yeah. And don't read me wrong. And I know a lot of people listen to this, so don't read me wrong. I'm not saying that the cop is not a good person.
Well, no, that's what I was saying.
That he's not a good cop. Yeah.
No, that's as I was saying. That's the distinction. Well, okay, so then we are on the same page, because that's the distinction I try to make to people. I try to say, no, you're when you say good, you're thinking of, like, people that I know, because I have cops in my family. I have cops. I married into a cop family. I
do too.
Yeah, I married into a cop family. So people are a little edgy about these conversations. But when I bring it up, I'm like, well, no. See, it doesn't matter that you're thinking about them as your your friend or your uncle or your dad or your sister or whatever, like when you hear good, that's all you think about. No, this is so and so. Okay, yeah, great, but that's not their job. There's no good cops as the job. The whole process, the whole thing is
exactly.
Is
that's my point.
It's the institution.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it. That's what it is.
Yeah. If Uncle Jesse is throwing a guy in a cage for having a dime bag in his pocket, he's a bad cop. Yeah. He may be a great uncle, a fantastic person out, at home, but that's it. So that's all I'm saying.
And he may even do other things that are praiseworthy while on the job, but almost all of them don't involve him actually having to have been on the job to do so, just being a decent human being.
Right.
He could have done it. So again, has nothing to do with being a cop. Like when they always talk about the hero cops that save people, it's like, okay, anybody could have done that. The badge and the uniform have nothing. They're not specially trained to do that stuff any more than anybody else who wants to take rescue courses and stuff like that and has a brain and can think logically and, no, sorry. It's not a problem, like anybody could. So they want to put the badge and the uniform. They want to attach it to that. So people go, oh, the heroes, the heroes. Okay, yeah, it may, even if it is a heroic act, the uniform had nothing to do with it. The job had nothing to do with it.
When I see a YouTube video where the cop buys the poor black kid a Happy Meal or stops in the street to play basketball with some disenfranchised youths, that's not part of the job.
No, exactly. And
just being a decent person.
Exactly, and it's great. It's great that
we do.
Well, okay, the basketball is great that he's a decent person. The buying McDonald's, he's buying it with stolen money. So F you, buddy. You're not that great of a fucking guy. I'm sorry.
Right.
Touche.
And the other aspect about it is that people associate law enforcement with security, right? And they're kind of pretty separate. It's like, sure, currently law enforcement has kind of a monopoly on only enforces the law, and they claim to also do security, but that's really a farce. That's an illusion, and so people, that you have to. I like to point out that there are actually, I think there are like 1/3 compared to security and private security and law enforcement. There's like 1/3 are law enforcement and 2/3 are private security in the United States. Yet you don't see videos of private security, breaking people's arms, tasing them to death, or tasing pregnant ladies, shooting dogs. You don't see that. Why is that?
I'll tell you where I do see that, and there's a lot of venues that I play music at that the security, I have seen them do those kind of things. But in those instances, it's not a private security company. It's the off-duty sheriff's department deputies.
Nice. Yeah.
That's where I see that. But here's a thought for you. You talk about security and you talk about needing police to make you safe. If that's their job and they're doing that job, why do so many people have to hire private security? There was an article, Jackson, Mississippi, where I live. There's a construction company that's building a multi-unit living facility, some apartment complex or something, and they've had so many. The crime's bad in Jackson. There's a lot of gang problems. There's a lot of carjackings and robberies, and these guys have come in and armed robbed the construction workers on the job in the middle of the day. They're stealing appliances out of the new units, and they'll cut the copper off the AC units. This is a everyday thing. So this construction company has had to come out of their pocket and hire private armed security. And get this shit. The other night, the guy is in his car where he makes his rounds and he sits in the parking lot overnight to keep the stuff from getting stolen inside. This guy comes up and puts a gun through the window and tries to arm rob the security officer. Oh, man. The security officer actually shot him or beat him up or something. So, good guy won. But here's the concept. The police are here to protect us, but all of these places where I play and down to construction workers just trying to do a job and build an apartment building, they have to pay out of their pocket to hire a private company to protect them. Why would they have to do that if the police are here to protect us and they're already getting our money by threat of violence?
Well,
Why the fuck are we having to pay this private company, man? That's what they're getting paid for, right?
Well, again, but that also goes back to, you can say, well, all right, because, you know, like the conservatives like to do, that, you know, they point to the Supreme Court decision and say, well, they said they didn't have to. Well, yeah, of course they don't have to protect you. But the bigger problem is, well, okay, yeah, it's definitely sucks that you have to pay, but I mean, I'd prefer to have to pay, but they also usually, in most cases at least, especially around here, they hamstring all the private companies. They're not allowed, you know, there's only so much they're allowed to do. Even if they're allowed to be armed, you still don't get to do, you still have to be, you know, you're still even more scrutinized than a cop will ever be. And again, you know, you're paying extra, so you're paying for crappy service that's not helping you. And then and the only other option you have is to pay for the limited amount of companies, one of the limited amount of companies that can actually afford to jump through the stupid legal hoops and the regulations and all the other bullshit to get to be able to have one of these companies, and then they're hamstrung by what the police will let them do. And those are your options.
And that's the free market.
Yeah, that's free market.
This is why free market doesn't work.
That doesn't work.
Free market and capitalism fails because it doesn't work.
That is what that. Yeah, exactly.
Housing crisis was because of free market.
But that's the thought. So,
but
yes,
private banks giving out those bad loans, they should have known better, right?
Yeah.
Wait, what? Anybody? Bueller? What? Okay.
But maybe we should wrap it up and deliver your final closing remarks. Merrick and Jonathan, thanks a lot for coming on. Really appreciate it. I love your show. I listen to it as well, and keep up the awesome work.
Yeah, we like doing it. We love your show too. We're always glad to be on. So appreciate the opportunity. Taxation is theft.
Yeah, man. Well, no, it's well, I mean, I joke about it all the time, but it is nice to have other people than Dave every once in a while. Because I mean, Dave, I mean, I say that, but I still talk to Dave regularly. Danilo stopped talking to me during the week anymore, so this is the only opportunity I get to talk to him. Dave, I get enough of all during the week. But you know, and I of course I also listen to the RadicaLogic Podcast, which, by the way, you haven't given me anything in a while. You guys falling behind again? Is everything all right?
We're working on something really big that's taken a lot of research, but it's going to be worth the wait, I promise.
Yeah, and with him being in town, and there's just been a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, he's been in Mississippi visiting me, going to court with me in case I got thrown back into a cage, which almost happened. And now I'm down here in Florida, so we've been. It's been crazy, man.
Oh,
we are working on something that's going to be good.
We've got a good one, and then we've got Daniele Bellelli coming up as well. So we're working up to that one.
Awesome. Did you interview him yet?
No, not yet. We haven't had time between my businesses and him and everything else. It's been crazy town, man.
Okay. Yeah, looking forward to that. That guy's awesome.
We're looking forward to it.
I love his podcast too, so I'm looking forward to that. But so yeah, it's good. It's great having. I mean, I always love having Merrick on, but it was great having you on too, Jonathan. This was a lot of fun. And
thank you, man.
All right, you're welcome back anytime too, of course.
Awesome. So anybody wants to help out the Seeds of Liberty, you can do so through Bitcoin or Patreon. Links are below. Patreon.com/Seeds of Liberty to help us out. $1 show is all we ask. If you find value in our content, please trade value for value. We are capitalists in the end, and monetary compensation is always appreciated and encouraged, right? It's free market incentives, right? If you like what we see, vote with your dollar or with your Bitcoin. That'd be nice too.
Preferably.
Vote with your Harriet Tubman dollar.
Or that. But awesome conversation, gentlemen. Thank you very much. This is the Seeds of Liberty podcast. Wishing everyone have a wonderful day. Take care.
Bye.
Adieu.
Cell 411 is a free app for Android and iOS that replaces government-controlled 911. Cell 411 allows you to preset a group of friends or private organizations to show up in any emergency. Cell 411 is a nightmare for the state because it proves their so-called services aren't needed. Cell 411 has had thousands of installs, and of course it's covered by the BIPCOT no government license. Cell 411 because your friends won't shoot you when you're in trouble. Without the government, who would build the emergency services? You and Cell 411. Get it today at getcell411.com. That's getcell411.com.